You will not smear that filth across the resonance tiles, Chancellor Virulane snapped, her voice slicing through the crystalline hall like a vibroblade. She didn't even look at him, only at the streak his mop left behind, as though human cleaning fluid might infect the memory of her ancestors. Kellen Marr paused, wrung out the mop slowly, and let a single droplet fall. It hit the shimmering star tile, hissed, and healed a micro-fracture no one else had noticed. A crack no alien tech had fixed in over a decade, sealed by a janitor's hand. You'll want to see how the moment they mocked him turned into a galaxy-wide reckoning. They thought he was scrubbing their floors. In truth, he was watching every fracture in their empire. Kellen didn't speak like a man beneath them. I'll move to the upper rings once this dries. Don't want the gravity variance to leave a stain. His tone was calm, unapologetic, not defiant, not begging, just steady, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He adjusted the rag tucked into his belt and nodded toward the girl crouched behind a pillar, small, violet-eyed, hiding under his coat. Her scaled hands trembled. The light in this place was too loud, too sharp. "Don't look down, Aerie," he said gently. "Only up. You'll breathe easier that way." The girl didn't speak. She never did around the Chancellor. Not since the nobles called her a mutation, then a liability, then, worst of all, a deviation from Empire purity. Kellen reached over and placed a tiny amplifier bulb in her palm, one that blinked with calming pulses he'd tuned just for her, using scavenged circuits. "I promised your mother you'd walk these halls," he whispered. "You're not the one who doesn't belong. Where are you watching from?" Because they thought he was only a janitor. They were about to learn how wrong they were. It wasn't the work that bothered him, it was the placement. The Celestial Academy housed heirs of star thrones, offspring of high war castes, and once every decade, a few low-rank diversity specimens to show off tolerance. Kellen wasn't even one of those. He'd been assigned janitorial clearance when the system flagged his DNA as non-aligned but human-compliant. A neat way of saying, "You can breathe our air, but not our status." He cleaned during off hours. He requested corners the nobles didn't walk. He wasn't hiding, just minimizing friction. But lately, Chancellor Virulane had changed the schedule, deliberately placing him where the nobles would gather. Not by error, not even by malice, by example. "This is what comes of letting humans in," she said to a cluster of robed acolytes, gesturing with her ringed hand toward him. "No caste, no structure, no discipline. They apply force where harmony is needed." Acolytes laughed. One snapped a photo. Kellen saw it, but didn't flinch. He was used to power, dressing itself in cruelty. What mattered wasn't their words. It was the way Ariel pressed closer to him, the way she reached for the sleeve of his jumpsuit, one stitched with thread made from earth silk, long band from official academy robes. Her hand curled in the fabric like it still smelled of her mother. Kellen kneeled beside her, away from the crowd, and tapped the panel near the entrance door, adjusting the light resonance frequency so it stopped flickering in strobe patterns, too fast for human eyes to notice. But for someone like Ariel, it made her tremble, hide, melt down. Now she sat still. Her breathing slowed, balance restored. He said nothing. No one thanked him. But the door stopped buzzing. And so did she. Later that night, when the academy lights dimmed and nobles returned to their quarters, Kellen lingered by the central column, the one housing the master calibration node for the orbital railgun array. He'd never touched it, never even swept near it. It required 12 access clearances and a cast ring older than Earth's atmosphere. But tonight, he stood quietly in front of it, let his mop rest against the pedestal, and looked at the interface like someone staring at an old friend. In the reflection of the crystal panel, a flicker of movement. Ariel, sitting on his shoulders now, humming a rhythm only he recognized. A navigation sequence. Old Earth, long dead. Kellen smiled, just a little, and whispered, "Still got it." They could mock the man, mock the child, mock the species, but they forgot one thing. A navigator never forgets his route. The girl on his shoulders hummed a rhythm lost to the archives, and Kellen didn't stop her. He just listened, eyes on the calibration node for the orbital railguns, fingers brushing the edge of the pedestal like a man testing old bone. "Your daughter has no right to be here." The voice came sharp, clipped. Chancellor Virlan again. She had returned, flanked by 2 armored attendants in glass thread uniforms that shimmered like liquefied stars. Ariel froze. Kellen didn't move. "The weapon cores are sealed to all but blood-bound caste," she continued, gesturing toward the node. "I would hate for someone to be accused of tampering." Her gaze dropped to Ariel, then to the mop leaning gently against the column. "It wouldn't be the first time your species confused utility with worth." Kellen exhaled through his nose. Slowly. "No tampering," he said, "just cleaning the calibration shell." Dust was interfering with the reflection band. He picked up the mop and stepped back without a word more, placing himself between the child and the Chancellor's glare. Ariel clung tighter to his shoulder. Her small, clawed fingers curled in the collar of his uniform, and Kellen gently tapped the side of her thigh. A quiet signal. "I've got you." The Chancellor didn't respond. She simply turned and walked, away with her guards, the edges of her robes trailing like solar flares. Later, in the maintenance dome near the Academy's underlevel, Kellen laid Ariel down on the cot they shared. 1 blanket, 1 pillow, 1 rusted shelf of scavenged parts from 3 species, and a soft glow orb pulsing a dull blue overhead, one he'd tuned to match Ariel's biorhythms. She slept fast, exhausted from suppressing herself all day. Kellen sat beside her and reached for a worn metal box tucked behind the support beam. Inside, the last remnants of a dead Earth fleet. A badge, worn smooth, edges dulled. A folded strip of star map cloth once used to wrap the minds of navigators for long drift flights. And a diagnostic wand with a cracked core, still functional in the right hands. He didn't take them out, not yet. Instead, he looked at Ariel's sleeping face, half human, half royal blood, and utterly discarded by both. "I didn't come here to fight," he whispered, "but they keep giving me reasons." The next morning, the Academy burst into color. A week-long celebration called the Convergence had begun, when 3 moons crossed paths in the sky and thousands of noble families arrived in orbit to witness the ceremonial railgun salute. It wasn't a military show. It was a cultural legacy, a tradition so ancient it predates most of the noble houses. 12 orbital railguns. Each fired once in sequence, painting light arcs across the upper atmosphere in synchrony with the tri-moon rotation. The final burst formed a lattice visible from 20 planets, a reminder that the Academy stood at the center of galactic memory. It also meant 1,000 new eyes in the halls. Kellen kept his head low, his badge hidden, his child close. But it didn't matter. On the second day, he was reassigned to clean the observation gallery during the first moonrise. The gallery, where the railgun controllers stood, where nobles gathered in silk metal robes and sipped gravity-sculpted wine, where he did not belong. He arrived with his mop in one hand, tool belt on the other, and a datapad slotted to cleaning mode, the only access level allowed for someone like him. As he stepped inside, conversation stopped. Whispers, Snickers. One noblewoman raised a cup and said loudly, "Does your daughter polish the weapons too, or only the floor beneath them?" Laughter. Even the guards smiled. Kellen didn't respond, but he noted something they didn't. The hum of the railgun control panels was off-pitch by a single frequency. The sync delay between the third and fourth guns, usually imperceptible, was widening. A misfire was coming. Not today, but soon. He turned back toward the glass, watching Ariel press her face to the far side of the gallery's wall, eyes wide as the three moons began to align. "Watch the angles," he whispered under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. "Moons don't move. We do." Ariel blinked, then smiled. In that moment, he wasn't a janitor. He was a father teaching orbital math to a child with starlight in her blood. Back in the hall, a maintenance drone zipped toward the railgun input panel. It sparked, jerked, short-circuited in midair, and slammed into the wall with a hard, metallic clang. A technician cursed. Another shouted for backup. Kellen stepped forward, then stopped. Not yet. Let it fail publicly, let them see the cracks. Only then would his knowledge matter. The last of the diagnostics synced to his pad. He slipped it back into his belt and turned away without a word. But before he left, he gently placed his mop against the side of the failing console. A quiet mark. That's where it would break. And when it did, he'd be the only one left who knew how to fix it. The mop still leaned against the failing console, a quiet mark no one understood. Kellen walked out of the gallery with Ariel's hand in his, her claws soft against his palm. Behind them, the nobles continued their chatter, unaware of the sync delays crawling through the railgun array's core systems. He didn't go far, just enough to slip into the service corridor that ran behind the observation deck, a narrow tunnel lined with coolant pipes and soft hums of old tech. Here, the smell of ionized dust replaced perfume, and the air sang with frequencies only navigators ever learned to parse. Ariel tugged at his sleeve. "Why did you leave your mop there?" she whispered, her voice low enough to vanish into the pipe song. "So I can find my way back," he murmured. He crouched down, eye level with her violet eyes. "And so, when it breaks, everyone will know who stood nearest." Her brow furrowed. She was 6, but already understood consequence. "You're not supposed to fix their guns," she said. "They hate us." "They hate what they think we are," Kellen corrected gently. "Not what we are." He pulled the diagnostic wand from his belt, the cracked one he'd kept hidden since his fleet days. The crystal core flickered faintly, then steadied as his thumb brushed the activation rune. Ancient Terran symbols danced across the surface. Ariel gasped. "It's singing." "It's listening," he said. In the gallery above, alarms began to chime, soft at first, then sharper. A ripple of startled voices rose. Kellen heard every word through the duct vents. "Railgun 2 out of sync. Feedback loop on 5. Shut them down before the festival." The Chancellor's voice cut through like ice. "Seal the control core. No outsiders, no deviations." Kellen pocketed the wand and exhaled. "Time," he whispered. Ariel clutched his sleeve. "Are you going to show them now?" "Not yet." He stood, brushing dust from his knees. "First, we watch." He led her deeper into the service corridor until they reached a grated window that overlooked the lower calibration bay. From here, he could see the inner shells of the railgun conduits, glowing faintly as tri-moon light poured through the Academy's transparent ceiling. He remembered flying between those moons once, using this very system as a navigational anchor. Back then, he'd been Commander Kellen Marr, last of Earth's navigators, charting the path for the fleet that never returned. Now he was a janitor holding his daughter's hand, watching nobles choke on their own brilliance. Below them, technicians in crystal armor rushed to override the railgun control panels. One slipped on a resonance tile, caught himself, then stared at the mop Kellen had left propped against the console. "Get that human trash out of here," someone barked. Another voice muttered, "It's the janitor's tool." "No," a younger acolyte whispered. "It's aligned." Kellen almost smiled. The mop's sensor threads, relics of navigator tech woven into its base, were quietly feeding calibration data into the diagnostic wand in his pocket. Every misfire, every pitch error, every sync drift, building a map no alien here could read. Beside him, Ariel closed her eyes and started humming again, the same rhythm from the night before. But now he realized she wasn't just repeating. She was adjusting, correcting his pitch in real time. "Where did you learn that?" he asked softly. She shrugged. "It's in the lights." "Navigator blood?" He felt his throat tighten. The alarms grew louder. Voices turned from irritation to panic. Railgun 3 locked on internal vector. Impossible. Emergency shutdown not responding. Then the Chancellor again. "Seal the chamber. We cannot allow a public malfunction during convergence. I want solutions." Kellen rose to his full height. His mop still leaned against the console. His diagnostic wand still flickered. And for the first time in 6 years he felt the weight of his old insignia in his pocket like a heartbeat. He turned to Ariel. "Stay here. No matter what happens, stay behind the grate." Her eyes widened. "Dad?" He reached out and pressed a finger to her scaled cheek. "I promised your mother. You will see the moons from the sky, not from a cell. This ends today." She nodded once, fierce and small. Kellen dropped down through the maintenance hatch like he'd never stopped doing it. His boots hit the calibration bay floor soundlessly. No one saw him until he was already at the console, fingers gliding across its glowing surface. Technicians spun around. "What are you?" He ignored them, sliding the diagnostic wand into a hidden port at the base of the railgun core. Ancient Terran glyphs bloomed across the panel. A hush fell. The console's hum steadied. One by one, the alarms dimmed. Kellen whispered a single word in a language no alien here had ever heard, the navigator's override phrase. The railgun. Lattice flickered, recalibrated, and locked back into proper sync. Above the bay, through the grated window, Ariel's humming matched the lights perfectly. She was guiding him without even knowing it. The nobles stared. Technicians backed away. One muttered, "What is he?" And Kellen, mop still propped like a banner at his side, straightened his patched uniform and looked up at the observation gallery. They had mocked the Custodian. They had mocked his child. But now, for the first time, they were silent. For 5 full seconds, the entire calibration bay stood still. Kellen Marr didn't flinch, not when the glyphs from the diagnostic wand danced across the control console. Not when the orbit-locked railguns purred back into sync like old engines remembering their rhythm, and certainly not when Chancellor Viralan appeared in the upper archway, her eyes burning cold. "Seize him," she commanded. 2 guards vaulted down the access ramp, weapons drawn. But Kellen didn't move, because he didn't have to. The railgun core, still humming beneath his hand, now registered him as primary. His override phrase still active. Any false move from the guards, and the weapons above could interpret it as hostile. He wasn't threatening them, but the system no longer saw him as a janitor. "Hold," Virelin barked. The guards froze. Kellen stepped back from the console and gently removed his wand. The glyphs faded. The light softened. "I restored calibration," he said, voice even. "You can verify it." The technician from earlier, the one who'd noticed the mop, was already checking the new alignment data. His expression shifted from suspicion to awe. "This is perfect," he muttered. "It's cleaner than our last 3 cycles." "Impossible," another whispered. "No human tech can interface with these systems." Kellen turned to the Chancellor. Her face was an immaculate sculpture of fury beneath control. "You tampered with a sealed weapon platform," she said. "You will be detained." "I didn't tamper," Kellen replied. "I corrected." "That distinction will not matter to the tribunal." Kellen let out a breath through his nose, steady, controlled. "Then let's bring them in," he said. "Let the Empire decide what matters." Hours later, the public chamber was filled. The Galactic Convergence Festival had drawn nobles, soldiers, scientists, and priests from 17 systems. Now, those same attendees packed into the Academy's council hall, a vast amphitheater carved from harmonic stone and laced with starlight veins that pulsed to emotional resonance. The Chancellor stood at the center platform, flanked by tribunal members. Kellen stood across from her in a patchwork uniform, still wearing the same boots, still carrying the mop. He'd insisted. "You may speak in your defense," one of the tribunal judges said. "I don't need to defend myself," Kellen said. "I'll demonstrate instead." He pulled the diagnostic wand from his belt and held it up. A hush fell. Every caste-born noble knew those glyphs now. They'd seen the viral footage already spreading across the planetary networks, the human janitor syncing the railgun array by hand. Kellen turned the wand in his fingers and touched its cracked core to the resonance pedestal in the center of the hall. The hall lit up. A 3-dimensional projection of the railgun network bloomed above them, rendered in real-time data. Energy flows, trajectory vectors, sync harmonics, all stabilizing and all attributed to his user signature. "No system on this planet should have let me do this," Kellen said. "Unless I had root access. Unless I had a navigator key." He paused. "And I do." Gasps. One of the tribunal members leaned forward. "That caste was lost before the Emberfall Wars. I was conscripted into the last Earth vessel to carry the line," Kellen said. "We were presumed dead after the Helix Rift collapse." He opened his coat and pulled out the star map cloth. Unfolded, it shimmered with layers of encoded coordinates. Proof of routes only navigators could perceive. Proof of where he'd been and what he'd survived. "This is my legacy," he said. "And hers." He looked to the side. Ariel stood at the chamber's edge, flanked by guards who hadn't dared lay a hand on her. She met his gaze and stepped forward. "I know the rhythms," she said, her voice small but clear. "They hum in the walls. I can feel when things are wrong." Virelan stepped forward, her voice sharp. "This changes nothing. You are human. She is a hybrid. Caste alignment is not transferable through emotional legacy." Kellen turned to her, and this time there was steel behind his calm. "I fixed a system your top engineers couldn't stabilize. I prevented a misfire that would have killed hundreds in orbit. I did it with tools you mocked, from a position you assigned to shame me." He let the mop fall to the floor between them with a soft clatter. "And I did it while raising a daughter no one else here had the courage to care for." Silence. Then the youngest tribunal member, a Foriel priest with twin hearts visible beneath her glass rib plate, whispered, "What if legacy isn't about bloodlines, but understanding?" The Chancellor tensed. The priest continued, addressing the chamber. "This man did not take power. He restored balance. Isn't that the first duty of any caste?" Heads nodded. Whispers echoed. A social shift began in real time, small but visible. Virelan clenched her jaw. "He cannot be permitted to remain." But the eldest tribunal member raised a hand. He will remain, and more than that, he will guide us. Kellen didn't bow, didn't smile. He simply walked to Ariel, knelt, and placed the star map cloth in her hand. "Your turn," he said quietly. The chamber watched, and somewhere deep in the academy, the railguns hummed in perfect harmony. Ariel held the star map cloth like it was alive. The tribunal chamber had gone still after the oldest member's ruling. Not silent, just stilled, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath, watching to see if the galaxy had actually shifted, or if the Chancellor would drag it back into place. But Kellen didn't wait for permission. He rose to his feet beside his daughter, hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He didn't posture, didn't plead. He just stood, as if the full weight of 17 star systems couldn't move him. Because it couldn't. Not anymore. "I'm not here to take a throne," he said, voice carrying through the chamber. "I came to sweep your floors. You were the ones who gave me reason to aim higher." That line didn't land like defiance. It landed like truth. And the room felt it. Even some nobles who'd sneered just hours ago now looked away, ashamed. Virilin's face was stone. Her voice was not. "This is performance, not legacy. One act of calibration does not make you a caste, nor does it elevate your child." Kellen looked toward the holographic lattice still floating above the resonance pedestal. Data continued updating in real time. Stable, clean, unbroken, and tied to his override signature. He turned to the tribunal. "You need proof of legacy?" He removed his patchwork uniform's top layer, revealing a harness of woven copper threads, each etched with orbital vectors, phase cycle formulae, and hand-scored navigator math. Then he pulled out one final object. A broken navigator cast ring, split in half at the base. Its inner core burned, but still humming faintly. He laid it on the pedestal. The pedestal lit up. It accepted the ring, and projected a code known only to Earth's last starbound navigators, those lost after the Helix Rift. A verification sequence no one alive had been able to replicate. Until now. Virilin stepped back. Her robe stiffened, shoulders squared. "You're reviving a deadline," she said coldly. "Do you know what that means?" "I do," Kellen said. He turned to Ariel, who still clutched the cloth. "And she's the one who will carry it forward." The tribunal members whispered among themselves, but one voice broke through from the gallery above, where thousands had gathered to watch the public stream of the proceedings. It was the technician from the calibration bay. He stood up, no rank, no robe, just a standard maintenance uniform stained with oil and time. "I was there when it broke," he called out. "We couldn't fix it. We didn't even understand what was wrong." He pointed toward Kellen. He did. He didn't posture. He didn't beg for permission. He just fixed it, like a custodian should. Ripples of agreement swept through the crowd. A noble woman rose next, her voice brittle, uncertain. "My daughter rides the orbital shuttle that would have been in firing path if the sync hadn't been corrected. I owe him her life." And finally, from the side, a soft voice, timid, young, unimportant in status. "It was the mop," a junior acolyte whispered. "He marked the failure site before it failed, like he knew." Eyes shifted again, back to the mop. Still lying where Kellen had dropped it. Quiet, scuffed, weighted with more history than anyone realized. Ariel took a step forward. She didn't ask. She didn't hesitate. She just walked toward the pedestal, placed the star map cloth beside the cast ring, and looked at the tribunal. "I want to help the Railguns sing better," she said. "Not fight, not conquer. Help." And that more than anything pierced the chamber's cold hierarchy. Kellen turned to the gathered assembly. "This is how it starts," he said. "You think legacy is about who wears the robe, but sometimes it's who washes it." A pause, then applause, quiet at first, then rising like a pressure shift. It wasn't wild, it wasn't performative, it was real. Virelin remained frozen, her power unraveling thread by thread. She didn't scream, didn't lash out. But she did speak finally, and her voice was a blade. "You have no role, no title. What do you think this all makes you?" Kellen didn't flinch. "I think it makes me what I've always been." He bent down, picked up the mop, rested it against his shoulder. A custodian. The crowd stilled again, waiting. "But today, I'm cleaning something a little bigger than floors." He turned to the tribunal. "If you'll allow it, I'd like to recalibrate the entire Academy's emergency logic flow. The failure in the Railguns wasn't isolated. There are patterns deeper than anyone's bothered to trace." The eldest tribunal member nodded slowly. "Granted, but only under full broadcast. Transparency must be part of transformation." Kellen nodded once. "Agreed." Then, almost as an afterthought, he looked toward the side wall, where the Academy's children were seated, half-caste, low rank, diverse lineage. He smiled and said, "You'll want to subscribe to this." The whole room blinked in confusion. He laughed softly. "It's an Earth saying, means watch what happens next." They gave him full system access that same evening. Not because of fear, not because of politics, but because the data didn't lie. The railgun sync remained perfect under his watch, and the diagnostics he submitted, handwritten in navigator glyphs, had already corrected 5 deeper faults no one else had even detected. And every fix he made was streamed live. Not with fanfare. Just quiet, methodical calibration. Mop by his side, daughter nearby. Ariel sat beside him now, legs crossed on the platform floor, hands buried in coils of low-frequency cable. She hummed softly, adjusting pitch with each pulse of the harmonics. Kellen didn't teach her that. She inherited it. The mop leaned in the corner again, now with a velvet cord across it, not to restrict access, but to mark its place. One noble's daughter had asked if it would be added to the Academy's Hall of Relics. Kellen said no. "It's still in use." 3 days passed, and the tribunal returned with a final resolution. The chamber filled again. This time not with outrage or judgment, but with something closer to hope. Even the crowd felt different. Fewer robes, more uniforms, more technicians, more maintenance staff. People who once blended into walls now stood front row. Chancellor Virelin stood once again at the center. But something had changed. The starlight veins in the walls dimmed as she stepped forward, not reacting to her, not singing with her emotions. She noticed. Kellen didn't smile. He just waited, Ariel at his side, fingers still stained with flux and resonance dye. A tribunal judge rose. "We have reviewed the events," she said. "The orbital weapon calibration, the caste verification sequence, the legacy ring, the navigator code embedded in your daughter's genetic profile. All confirmatory." Another judge continued, this one with transparent skin and slow-moving speech. "Custodian Kellen Marr, formerly commander of Earth's Helix Navigator Corps, we recognize your caste as reactivated, not in name, but in function." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Even the nobles couldn't argue that. The eldest judge stood last. "You chose not to take power, not to claim vengeance. Instead, you cleaned what we corrupted." He gestured to Ariel. "And you passed it on, not as dominance, but as care." Then, slowly, the tribunal turned to Viralan. You, Chancellor, failed to report systemic weapon drift. You suppressed prior diagnostics, and you leveraged humiliation as deterrence instead of merit. The consequence of that is clear. Viralan's jaw tightened. Her gaze slid to Kellen, but she said nothing. It was Ariel who spoke first. "Do you still think I'm broken?" Her voice was quiet. No malice, just genuine curiosity. The room held its breath. Viralan, to her credit, didn't flinch. "No," she said at last. "I think you're what comes next, and that frightens me." Then, with the stiffness of a tectonic plate cracking under pressure, she bowed, low, controlled, but downward, to the child first, then to the father. Kellen didn't move. But Ariel reached for his hand. That was enough. After the tribunal adjourned, a crowd gathered not for protest, but for witnessing. They watched as Kellen returned to the calibration bay, not with guards, but with a team. Alien engineers, human observers. 2 half-caste apprentices already calling Ariel Navigator Ling. He showed them how to chart systems with feeling, not just math. How rhythm and precision weren't enemies, and how a tool didn't have to shine to save lives. The mop stayed nearby. It wasn't holy, it wasn't famous. It was just his. A reminder that fixing galaxies begins by cleaning what no one else wants to touch. On their final night in the academy, before returning to their quarters off-site, Kellen tucked Ariel in beneath a blanket stitched from salvaged shuttle fabric. She'd lined it with railgun schematics earlier that day. He didn't stop her. "You were never supposed to live like this," he whispered. Ariel looked up at him, her scaled cheek pressing into her palm. "I like it here," she said. "They're listening now." He nodded. "They are," she yawned. "Does this mean I'm important?" He brushed hair from her forehead. "It means you're needed. That's better." She fell asleep moments later. He sat there longer, holding the silence like a fragile thing. And when the chamber lights dimmed and the harmonic walls sang their night song, he finally stood. Before he left the room, he looked once more at the mop leaning in the corner. Still patched, still unassuming, still waiting. He didn't pick it up, not this time. He left it behind, because the academy would always need a reminder. Not everything powerful gleams. Some things simply endure. If you've ever been dismissed for being too quiet, too simple, or too human, subscribe and don't miss our next story. They called him the Janitor of the Stars, until his daughter silenced the war choir. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?